camped a lot of old folks in big and instead of sending them home to their families, he I think his biggest mistake was that he cramped them all into well, allegedly he had the chance to either be send them home to their families or try to keep them as separate as possible so no infections can spread. But allegedly, he just um, located a lot of elderly, vulnerable people in, like for example, they put them all under one housing association, for example, so the virus spread even easier. Or I'm not sure. It was pretty scandalous. A lot of infections happened because of his directives. I know that much. So yes, so he lost to Clara Dobrev, and then the third person was Markizai Peter. Now this guy is quite a strange character. This guy, he started out in a little. He's the mayor of a little village in the south of Hungary, of Hódmezővásárhely. Yes, it's a very long name. This guy started out as, obviously, like many of them do, anti-corruption. But it's very interesting because then he hired he hired a gardener of consultation to the city. Yes, a gardener to consult him on gardening issues of the city that he's mayor of for like an equivalent of, which is, so this guy, the gardener who consults him on the city, makes like 2.5 million forints a month, which is like 7,000 euros a month, which is a really good wage for a Hungarian. And he basically sets up these fake offices like all other corrupt politicians before him to pay his friends a good sum of money. This Markizai Peter originally started out with Jobbik, which I will talk about next. But Jobbik, obviously, as many people know who follow a bit of Hungarian politics, was a very right-wing party, and now they teamed together with Gyurcsány Ferenc, the former leader who was very globalist. But this Markizai Peter got a lot of Jobbik support, not from the people who vote Jobbik, but basically ex-party members back in 2017. He got a lot of their support for some reason because allegedly he was anti-corruption, anti-Fidesz, and this was allegedly good enough, suppose in a way as good enough to warrant him to become mayor because he ran as an independent. But then it turns out that he's actually really globalist and really left-wing. I mean, in 2018, he was in Washington meeting with quite Democratic Party candidates there. And he was also in the American Embassy meeting with people there. I mean, in itself, it's not a bad thing. But then this Markizai Peter blames everyone for being in bed with Fidesz. He literally blamed Toroczkai László, the leader of Mi Hazánk Mozgalom, of being in bed with Fidesz. And actually, this Markizai Peter goes into pro-Fidesz channels and TV shows more. And this really interesting story came out that there was a guy from the Jobbik party who was driving a car on the M3 highway in Hungary, and he had about 18 million forints in his trunk of his car and already filled out ballots. Now, we don't know much about this because it's still under investigation, but there's a lot of talk that this guy who was carrying the ballots and the 18 million forints in his car was somehow connected to Markizai Peter, which is a bit dodgy. And for a fact, I know this is real because from throughout the political spectrum, from the left to Fidesz to Toroczkai László, they all reported the same story. So if all three spectrums report on the same story, there must be some truth in this matter. So this is very interesting. But the more interesting thing is that he said he would account for and he would try to investigate Gyurcsány Ferenc, that is the guy who was the leader of was the prime minister of Hungary in 2006. He would try to investigate him for corruption, but then he's in the same camp essentially as he is. He's very good friends with Karácsony Gergely, Márki-Zay Péter, who's very good friends with Gyurcsány Ferenc. So again, this guy is a shell. Obviously, he's not going to do anything, even if he would have gotten. And very interestingly, even though Karácsony Gergely came in second, he stepped down to give his backing to Márki-Zay Péter, even though Márki-Zay Péter was third place. And a lot of the voters who voted Karácsony don't understand this either, because the two camps don't exactly go together. So this is a very interesting development that happened. And last but not least, the leader of Jobbik, who's now in bed with Gyurcsány, came fourth. Jakab Péter. This guy is another joke. This guy started this political party in Jobbik as a really hard-wing nationalist. He was always talking about Jews, basically. He was always talking about how they're a problem in Hungary. And when there was even a video where he smirked when the comments about World War II events were happening, he was in the background smirking. And it turns out this guy has actually got people who were in the camps. So so again, this is very strange to me that this guy makes fun of that event, which happened in World War II, but then now he claims that he had relatives in the camps. So this guy is a joke. He literally goes into the parliament with sacks of potatoes and says that, oh, Orbán Viktor buys off the electorate with sacks of potatoes, and this is all that Hungary is worth to him, as in worth to Orbán. He's basically a showman. He's loud, he's obnoxious. This guy is quite a joke, and no wonder he came fourth in these battles. And it's not because he's really like a loud or a showman that he really didn't get people's vote. It's because he went from hard right to hard left within a heartbeat. So yeah, but all this show on the pre-elections of who's going to be the leader of the opposition is basically a farce. It's only done so the left-wing media has something to talk about until the elections come. And these are the people. So you got a lady, the wife of Gyurcsány, who comes from a hard communist background, who plays liberal. We got Karácsony Gergely, the opportunist, the mayor of Hungary. We got Márki-Zay Péter, the independent, who's not so independent. And we got a hard right-wing guy who turned communist showman. So these are the opposition to Fidesz, and obviously Fidesz is living this up because it just serves into their hands, and it shows how ununited this so-called united coalition is. And for many people, it still serves the Hegelian dialectic of being two-party politics. But I suppose this only can serve well to normal parties like Mihazánk, which is a true third way movement. I know you guys may think I'm shelling for them, but I do genuinely like them because it is an alternative to Fidesz and to the Slob coalition. Anyway, I know this has been a bit complex for non-Hungarians, as there's a lot of new names in here, but I will be talking about these people quite a lot more. Thank you very much for listening. Sziasztok, barátaim!